I've known Dave Conley for a bit now. In fact, he was a guest a couple of times on my previous podcast called Imperfect Action. He is an author of an upcoming book called Muberty, and it's really a guide for going from midlife crisis to Kickass Midlife. And Dave is not a doctor, but he has taken control of his health as a key step to an amazing midlife. In fact, when I first met him, he was speaking at a conference that was really focused on mastering stress and health and fitness. And midlife is a time in our lives when our choices from the past 20, 30 years or so kind of catch up with us. And it's also the time that what we do now will really determine the quality of our health and therefore the quality of our life as we go forward today and even beyond midlife. And Dave shares what he's learned from his own experience as well as from others. I actually didn't think this would be a podcast about health and wellness, except I knew we'd touch on it, of course, but there's so many different aspects to midlife. And yet that is really where we spent the bulk of our conversation. Now, we talk about approaching midlife as a distinct life stage, but then we really get into our shifting health in midlife and some of the changes that we all go through, we all start noticing, as well as, and I think this is so key, knowing yourself and avoiding the one-size-fits-all fitness and diet fads. He makes a great point in there that things that work for other people may not work for you, and things that work for you may not work for other people. And so it's important to really get to know yourself well. We also spend a bit of time talking about the simple things you can do to make a significant difference in your health right now today. They're not complicated. Most of them are fairly simple. Some of them are things that we probably know we should be doing, but don't necessarily do. But he really emphasizes the importance around it and how to get started with it. And so I really appreciate Dave for both the simple practicality of his approach, as well as the focus on finding what works for us now, recognizing that what works for others or even what worked for ourselves in the past may not work today. Love to hear what your thoughts about this episode. Please continue to share this episode with people that you think would really resonate with, that would like to hear Dave's message and would really benefit from his approach. But for now, if you're ready to play bigger, let's get started. Today's guest is Dave Conley. And Dave, you and I have known each other for a little bit. We actually met through a mutual friend, Bill Courtwright, who was the first guest on this podcast. And you also named this podcast Midlife Mastery. You suggested the name and I loved it. And so that there is a bit of a history there. And so, but I always like to let guests introduce themselves. So Dave, how do you introduce yourself to people?
Great question. I am a dream maker and I am a way shower. I am a venture partner. I am an occasional speaker and upcoming author. All of that usually manifests itself through definitely the speaking and the writing. That is work, and also as a venture partner, I do that dream making and way showing a lot through that, as I am running the health and wellness pillar of a venture capital fund.
Nice, and you mentioned soon to be author. You've got a book coming out, so just quick, paragraph summary of the book and what's it about?
Yeah, thanks. The name of the book is Muberty. It's the guide of going from midlife crisis to a kick-ass midlife. And it really came along and as through midlife and really understanding what this crazy time is and realizing that people around my age were going through like the same things and they manifested in different ways. And we make jokes about this, right? And we make jokes about uncomfortable truths, the nose rings and the boob jobs, the sports cars running off, it's the jokes of midlife, right? And I was like, okay, what is this? And it's like, this is actually a really important time of our lives. And I call it Muberty for a very, very specific reason, is that we all go through this transition in life, this midlife puberty. So midlife is super key. And it's my belief is that midlife is the time that you must make changes in order to live the very best second half of life. You have to have changes in thinking, changes in how you treat yourself and your body, your mind, your heart, your spirit, shifts in your relationship, shifts in your vocation. All of those things come together at this time. So how do you channel that energy? How do you make it so that it's just the amazing second half? And that's what I wrote about.
Awesome. And of course, dying to read it because that's really kind of the essence of this podcast is me trying to figure that stuff out as, I hit midlife and realize that as I look around, none of the stereotypes and tropes seem to fit who I was. The advertisers reaching out to me missed me entirely, just what midlife is normally represented as isn't how I felt about me, other than I knew this was, you mentioned kind of a time of transition, but no one ever mentioned, hey, there's this transition. It's just, midlife, that's like the part in the middle. You don't even think of that as a transition like you do, other things. So I like the idea of Muberty, it's a definitive transition. There is something happening here that we will all go through.
100%.
So where should we even start talking about this? Because, you mentioned like several facets of life there, from health and fitness, careers come up, I know, in midlife, I guess trying to recapture the youth and not do it in a foolish way. So let's reframe that a little bit and just, how do we feel at our best about who we are becoming? Wow, those are like 7 deep questions there.
It's all of them. Yeah, I know. And that's where a lot of the confusion is, right? It's like, why do I feel so weird? And I'm like, well, welcome to Muberty. Like you felt weird in puberty too. I'm like, yes, so welcome. It's supposed to be weird.
It is. And it feels like now, and I don't know if this is true. It feels like midlife is different now than it used to be, but maybe that's just because I'm going through it now versus just watching people go through it. But all right. So for this Muberty transition, like, where do we even start? Like, what do we need to know? Because it is multifaceted. So where is a good place to just start thinking about how to reframe our life so that, put ourselves in a good position right now? You said right now is the time for transition. Where do we start?
Oh, wow. That's a big question. I think, well, first is recognition, right? Just recognition as to where you're at and that you're not losing your mind. And even folks that are just like, don't feel any particular, like, hey, this is midlife time. All you have to do is ask a few questions, which is, okay, the folks that I've talked to, and I've interviewed a ton of people on this, it's like the moment that they felt just a little bit on the, like, oh, shoot, I'm in midlife, is the moment after a year of fighting it, the moment that they said, oh, I need reading glasses. That's that. Oh, yeah, much better. So that's that. Your body's changing out from underneath you, right? We put on weight. There's a chronic condition or a chronic medication that you get put on. Doctors that I've spoken to had said, yeah, like 3 things tend to get us all at the end of the phase of our life, which is heart disease, cancer, or stroke. And it's not uncommon for somebody to hit up one of those in midlife. And we tend to all recover from it in midlife. So it's one of those like, oh, holy smokes, something big has come up. So our body changes out from underneath us. And there is often that it's like, oh, I want to get back into the shape I was. I know that trying to get into the shape that you were in your 20s, when you're in your 30s and 40s, that's not a good idea, because you can do a lot of damage. And actually you can get into much better shape than when you were in your 20s and 30s that I have found. I'm in better shape today than I have been at any point in my life. And it's optimized for who I am at this point in my life. Very different. If I did the same things that when I was in my 20s, actually I wasn't in shape in my 20s, but if somebody who was in shape in their teens and 20s, if they're trying to get back to that, I have not found it yet that it's a good idea. It's like, oh, I just want to fit into these pants. It's like, no, don't do that. So that shift in health is big. And that's often the wake-up call.
You mentioned this almost seems like a paradox. Like, don't try to get in the shape you were in your 20s. And by the way, you can get in better shape. So yeah, what's different? Don't do what we did, but you can be better now. Explain that a little bit.
Sure. The thing about midlife and where you are in this transitionary time, and yeah, there are sex differences for sure, differences between men and women, obviously, but also in the health wise. Generally, again, so we'll do massive generalizations, as both sexes go through fundamental shifts in their health, and they are both often hormone related. We are chemicals all the way down, right? And our hormones run the show. It's something that we often don't talk about. And for men, hormones need to be optimized. For women, they need to be balanced. And we can dive into that a little bit more. However, the overarching thing is this: changing how we think about our health and getting very quantifiable as to what's happening and getting very into what's going on with our health. If you are on social media, if you're, getting and it's something that we often don't talk about. And for men, hormones need to be optimized. For women, they need to be balanced. And we can dive into that a little bit more. However, the overarching thing is this: changing how we think about our health and getting very quantifiable as to what's happening and getting very, very into what's going on with our health. If you are on social media, if you're, getting your diet and health advice from podcasts, God bless you. That's great. And that's an interesting place to begin. However, I know working with a lot of people, and one of my careers was helping people lose a lot of weight, particularly because it started with myself. I lost 150 pounds, and then I got into that field, is that we are precious snowflakes. We are all different in that you get this mythology of like, hey, just eat keto, you'll be great. Just be a vegan, you'll be great. Just do vegetarian, just eat low carb, high fat, just do this, just, eat pescatarian, and you'll be healthy. Untrue. It's all true and it is untrue, right? The difference is really learning on how your body actually performs given where you're at, because the combination of factors that you have and the combination of factors that I have, meaning how we grew up, our genetics, our current environment, our current stress, our current body mass and where we're at, how we've treated our body over the course of our lives, and all of the different combination of factors that we are today. And all of those things go into a unique profile that says, hey, all of those things may work, but they may not work for you. And so getting really crystal clear on what to do with that. It's like, okay, well, I've tried that and it didn't work. Gotcha. That's where you have to get super curious. And that means going and seeing how you feel, getting blood work done, getting genetic tests done, getting really curious about your body and where it's at, and getting a team of practitioners around it that really are really pulling for your individual health rather than you just throwing darts at a board. Let's get really specific for a moment, right?
Well, and let me jump in, but before we get there, Dave,
sure,
and please do get specific.
No, interrupt me anytime.
So, my experience with going to the doctor is, well, it's very brief. Usually you have something wrong. Otherwise, why would you be there? And maybe they prescribe something. Maybe they do a very, very simple blood test for a very specific reason.
Yeah.
So how do you find doctors that are looking more for optimization in health versus just not letting you die?
Great point, particularly in North American, particularly in US medicine. It's like, here's a pill, get out of my office. We're done now, because the combination of basically insurance and pharmaceutical companies have created a production environment where practitioners get very little time and they have to fix something rather than prevent something. So it's just a perversion of actual health, right?
Yeah. So where do we find that? Because there are doctors out there. Otherwise, you wouldn't be mentioning it.
Yeah. Two things go hand in hand first, right? The first is, what do you want? Like, what do you actually want? Because your health goals and my health goals are going to be radically different, and how we approach those are going to be different. And we may both want to say lose weight, right? But the approach is going to be different. If I ate exactly what you ate and you ate exactly what I ate, you're going to have different health outcomes. So getting really serious about what is it that you want? What's your health goal? Then it's like, okay, how do you measure success there, right? And who's going to help you along that path? Sometimes it's health coaches. Sometimes it's medical practitioners, Eastern, Western, all of those things. Recognizing this fundamental truth is this: no doctor, no practitioner, Eastern or Western, no coach, none of them are actually responsible for your health. You are. You are the only person. So you have to learn up on these things. You have to get knowledgeable about these things. And it does take time, money, and energy to do it. Relying on insurance companies, relying on pharmaceutical companies, and relying on sort of the system as is insufficient. You do have to spend your own time, money, and energy, and you have to learn these things because there is, I would say, nothing more important than your health. Some other big things that I've learned is I often choose DOs rather than MDs. They're both medical doctors, right? They just have different trainings, and DOs tend to look at holistic rather than sort of individual things. That is a gross generality, but I love my DOs more often than my MDs, although I have gotten quite curious MDs. The second thing is this: interview your medical practitioners. And I have found that one question weeds out the good ones from the bad ones, and that is, how do you maintain your professional development? What are you interested in? What are the conferences? What are the things that you read? What are the things that you maintain your professional development? If they are, hey, I'm really interested in longevity. I'm really interested in, midlife. I'm really interested in hormones. I'm really interested in, if you find that they're really excited about a topic and they go and they do that just as the awesome scientific nerds that they are, that's your person because they're curious. If they're sort of like, I go to a conference every now and then because it's in a cool location, yeah, they're not your person. That takes time. You've got to interview these people. You just can't accept it as getting in the machinery. You're the one responsible. You have to figure out what your health goals are, and you have to learn up about these things. It will take time.
All right. Thank you. And so I interrupted you. You were about to get into specifics. You were talking about blood work and different things to get done. And so let's pick back up right there.
Certainly the one of the things that I've done with all of my clients, and what I pay a lot of attention to is running really good hormone panels. The machinery of the human really runs on hormones, and the big ones are the stress hormones like cortisol, the metabolic ones like glucose, and how your body transforms energy, food into energy, and also your sex hormones, which are mostly poorly named, like testosterone and progesterone. That they're more in line with. Those are the general areas where these hormones are produced. However, what they do is very expansive, so like a sex hormone is, I would say, just poorly named. Like testosterone sort of runs the show for a guy, and progesterone and testosterone, women get a lot of extras in there, really run, a lot of her world. And for a man, getting those good hormone panels and understanding particularly how testosterone and affects all of the other sets of hormones, whether it's your rest and digest, stress hormones, or also how it affects your metabolism, super key. Often, if you optimize one in, say, the testosterone space, men tend to come in line, but it takes months of figuring that out. Women, looking at where her progesterone, testosterone are, and in relation to all of the other hormones, super key. It's like, because for a man, you can sort of dial it in on one and they all come in line. For a woman, it's dialing in all of them and getting them all working together. And that tends to really, really get things going. Saying all of that, that's great. It's also further down the line. Some of the things that I always start with is, if you want to make serious positive inroads on your health, it starts with simple things like making sure you get enough water, like really good, clean water, making sure that you have a good stress and meditative practices, that you're starting your day well with intention. And that you're really dialing in your sleep. If you are overweight, chances are really high that you have crappy sleep. And these things go hand in hand. These are honestly the basics you can start with, and it brings a lot of things in line. Does that make sense?
It does. And I love starting with the basics, and that almost seems too easy. Like, no, we don't, skip that. Don't worry about that. I want to get to the real stuff. But obviously that is the foundation.
Yeah.
And I like that it's simple, water, drink water. I mean, I know in my own life, if I start my day just having a big glass of water right when I get up, my day goes better. Like I just feel better about the world. And it's a little thing. You mentioned that if you're overweight, you probably have really crappy sleep. What is the connection there?
Well, sleep is a magical time that we spend a third of our life doing it, and it has very specific functions. It is the time when we are resting and resetting. It is the time when we are creating memories. It is a time when our entire systems are coming back into alignment to set us up for the rest of the day. And when you are chronically underslept, we make poor decisions. We make poor decisions of how we eat. We get stressed in different ways. We are unable to actually digest because we're in a heightened, alerted state. Our immune system does not work optimally. There is a cascade of, including indicators of serious long-term conditions like dementia, heart disease, cancer. Like all of these things are associated with chronic lack of sleep. And when it gets down to it, there is nothing more important as far as how we treat ourselves, how we live in this world is really good, solid sleep. And for anyone listening to this, if you aren't actually actively tracking your sleep, then that's the first thing. Getting really curious is the beginning here, and having a way to say, if I do this, then this happens. To be able to run experiments, to be a quantifiable self. Track your sleep. It is super key. That will naturally lead to other things. Like one of the biggest health indicators of healthy life is heart rate variability. And heart rate variability is really a very simple concept. It just says that your heart changes heart rate variability, optimally. It goes quick when it needs to go quick, and it goes slow when it needs to go slow. So if it's quickly shifting gears, then you are much healthier than kind of the slow gear, right? Just think of the difference between shifting gears in a car that hasn't been maintained at all. The oil's never been changed, the transmission's never been changed. It's a 45-year-old car, and you're just like struggling to get up the hills of Colorado, going up the mountain. Yeah, that's going to be very different than a 45-year-old car that has been lovingly cared for by your favorite car nerd who's just like had all the transmission and the oil, and it's got great gas in it. You're going to be driving much better in that. So same thing, heart rate variability. That is quantifiable self, tracking your sleep, and then dialing in what good sleep means for you. Often, you'll hear this a million times. Often it's the three big ones, which is cold, dark, and quiet. Colder than you think, dark, like pitch black. I often carry black tape around with me to put over things if I'm in a hotel. And quiet. So, those three things, making it a cave, often affects a lot of that. So that's the basics. If you can dial in your sleep, often the rest of your life snaps into gear. You start losing weight. You're much more sane. You're happier. Get that one in, and that is a foundational practice.
All right. So we get our sleep dialed in as part of that health and wellness. And I was also wondering, is it that our needs are so different in midlife from when we were younger for sleep, nutrition, fitness, and all that? Or is it that now we've just we've used up all our reserves from bad habits, and this is when it all catches up with us and when we really need to reverse it? And maybe that's the same difference, but...
It is. Yeah. There are no quick, as much as social media, as much as pharmaceutical companies, as much as the supplement companies will tell you or want you to believe, there are no quick fixes. Like, period, end of story. There is no like, just take this pill and you will be fine. We are the sum of our experiences that happen over time, essentially. So the drip of our environment and our practices and our inputs and how we feel about them and our mental and emotional and spiritual and physical states go to make up this existence. And how we feel about something and our emotional capabilities affects all of that as much as the other way around. Descartes did a real disservice to us in the 17th century by separating the mind and the body, and it bled into like our sciences and our our spirituality practice. Like, it bled into everything on the Western side. What a tremendous disservice. We are one human. Like, you can think yourself well, think yourself sick, that is a reality, right? It's to think otherwise, just the placebo effect. It's like, yeah, if you believe that something's going to work for you, yeah, it will. I mean, that's amazing. I mean, like, think about that. Think about that for a moment, because yeah, if you believe something's going to work for you, it will. That's what's amazing about us as humans, is that we are both incredibly complex and dumb monkeys at the same time. We are evolutionarily very, very similar to where we were 200,000 years ago, and except that we have access to the wealth of human knowledge and constant communications all the time. We're not meant for this. Like, we have Stone Age minds and bodies in the 21st century of where we are. It's cray. So we have not caught up, and we probably never will.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit, Dave, because to me that seems like a source of stress and a source of some of the craziness we see in the world of just, people not, and I don't know that we consciously think about, but people feeling left behind, people feeling irrelevant, people keeping up now, but just by their fingertips, and wondering, where it's all shifting to. People still trying to master where we were 30, 40, 50 years ago, just almost living in a different time, just because the world changed so fast.
Yeah.
So we're not going to stop the world from changing. We're not going to change that. Our brains are desperately trying to keep up because, they really matured in a previous age. And now we're trying to, master all this. So what are some of the things that we can do to, I don't know, just help with that stress, that anxiety, that how do I fit into the world? And I know that's a big question, but just thinking.
Holy smokes. All right. Well, yeah, that is like, how long you got? Okay. I know what's true for me, right?
Perfect.
For what is absolutely true for me is having really, really strong, attention practices. And, the basics are having a really good, solid mindfulness and meditation practice as a part of your world. That is very grounding, and that is very focusing and centering. You don't have to hear anything more on that. Wisdom is just wisdom because it keeps on getting repeated. What I just said is 2,000 years old or more. Like the ancient Babylonians and Egyptians were carving this into rock thousands of years ago. So having a mindfulness and meditation practice, this isn't new. Let me clue you in, not new news. So that's why it keeps on coming up, right? So that's very focusing. And as far as on the input side, I know that our phones they're made by the devil. I mean, they are built, custom built and weaponized through artificial intelligence and the latest from psychology and sociologists and behaviorists to grab our attention at every moment, because the more that these companies have your attention, the more money they make, the higher their stock rate, right? The higher their stock price, and the more yachts they can own. So, the documentary, The Social Dilemma, which if you haven't seen on Netflix, is terrifying. And I know because I was there. I helped create this mess. So I'm sorry. This wasn't our intention. What I know is that your attention is your most valuable commodity. And when you don't pay for something, then you are the commodity. So if you are not paying for Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or your phone or whatever, right? Like if you're not paying for something, a service through your computer or your phone or a device or whatever, you are the commodity. And that means that they want your attention so that they can separate you from your money, because that's how they make money. And so that's the first thing. Inputs have to be controlled. And you will know if you've got like a thing here to work on, is if you just do one thing. Leave your phone at home for a day and see how you feel. If you just decide to walk out your door without your phone, like we did 10 years ago, it hasn't been that long, 10 years, right? If you walk out of your home with a phone, and if you have a negative feeling to that, you've got a problem. It's like for real, you've got a thing. And that means that your attention needs your attention.
Just thinking about that, actually, on one hand, I like to be able to say, well, no, I can leave my phone, no problem. Then I started thinking, well, what if I have to contact someone? What if there's an emergency? What if something happens? I grew up, we both grew up in a time when you had no contact with phones anywhere when you're a kid out running around the neighborhood playing.
Yeah. Zero.
So, and the number of emergencies that come up in my life are very, very few and far between. So it's not even like a rational thought of well, what if I don't have it? So that's actually really disturbing. And thank you for that, Dave.
Yeah. Leave your phone at home. Just once.
Just once.
Yeah.
It's
go old school cool. It's like, I'll meet you at the mall.
All right. So we've got kind of the health, and we talked about, just kind of sleep, and we talked about, kind of mindfulness there.
Yeah.
I was curious if there's anything you had mentioned that everyone's body is different. Everything is different, but are there some basic nutritional principles that broadly apply to most people, like a place where people should start experimenting?
Sort of. Here, well, we'll get back to the first things first, which is what's your health goal? For a lot of people, it is just losing weight, but it's also what's underneath all of that. If your hormones are out of whack, then it's going to be difficult for you to lose weight. If your sleep's out of whack, your hormones are going to be out of whack. That it's going to be difficult to lose weight. And for most people, also, it is not the food itself. They may actually be dialed in as to what it is. It is the behavioral changes necessary in order to make this happen, right? So what are the reasons why you are eating the wrong things at the wrong time and all of those? And so people really want this, just do this, just eat keto, just eat vegan, just eat this, and you'll be fine. Well, if that was true, then we would all be fine and we would stop talking about this. So it's not the case, right? So, live up to that first lie, which is you actually got to work as to, one, what do you want? And two, how do you want to get there? And how do you know you're going to get there? One of the things that I found is also that we believe that calories are God's gift. It's if I just paid attention to calories, counted every single one and it's I got my macros for the day and the rest of it. Calories are kind of BS because, if you look back at the history of calories, it's really just an energy function that is calculated by burning whatever it is and calculating the amount of energy to take something basically to ash. And it was okay, that is a kilocalorie. That is just the amount of energy put into a substance in order to take it to ash. It does not say how your body actually consumes it. A beer calorie, a beef calorie, and a butter calorie are all treated extremely differently by your body. And they will be slightly different for you as for me. This is where all these combinations come into effect, right? And therefore, the calorie is just, it doesn't need to be number one. It needs to be in there, but it's like 2 or 3, not number one, even though it's the simple one that we all focus on. Are calories important? Yes, only because of the laws of thermodynamics. The amount of energy you put into a system has to come out, right? So it's like the math still has to work, and it's just not number one. So how your body actually treats those calories is way more important. The only thing that we know for absolute certainty out of all of it is sugar will kill you. That is the one thing, and it is in everything. Like, it is in everything. It is actually hard to find anything without sugar these days. And it hides in juices, it hides in meat, it hides in canned, anything that's processed. It's like, if you get one of those rotisserie chickens at the store, take a look at it. It's often covered in sugar. That's how they make it look all brown and delicious. I'm like, oh my God. So, try and get a pasta sauce without sugar in it. A broth, any kind of broth, covered in sugar. So on and on and on. It's because it tastes good, right? And so we consume way more sugar than our body can actually store and process and the rest of it. And that leads to a whole host of primarily heart disease. Sugar and heart disease are primary factors with each other, and the sugar industry worked very hard to separate them, and it's not the case. Heart disease will kill you, and sugar is among the highest reasons. So we just consume way too much because it's hiding in everything. That is the one thing I can absolutely say.
Well, that's really interesting because, I think of sugar and diabetes and other health issues, but I've never heard it connected to heart disease.
Yeah, it is the primary cause of heart disease.
Oh, that's fascinating. I mean, not a doctor, layman here, but so I only understand so much about it. But what is the contributing factor there, or what happens in our bodies?
Again, not a doctor. This is actually UCSF, University of California, San Francisco, has a tremendous amount of resources on this, particularly around sugar. So if you do your favorite search engine on this, that will help you out. So sugar contributes first and foremost to inflammation, and then it in combination with the food that you have in your system, the bad fats that you have, and specific bad fats with the sugar go hand in hand to how you process those calories, how you store those calories, and how you build muscle, and how your veins actually function, the plasticity of those veins. In an inflamed state, and with the sugar, it will tend to create either blockages or your veins to stop being as flexible, or both. And sugar is that main component of inflammation and depositing those lipids to the walls of your veins. Without sugar, it's very difficult for anything to attach, actually, the actual function of it. So it has to go with. So like if you went to a low-fat diet and you kept the same amount of sugar, you still have heart disease. If you went to a low-salt diet and you kept the same amount of sugar, you still have heart disease. It is a big piece of how we get blockages and how we maintain that inflammation and inflammatory response, and our inability to actually clear that starts with sugar, for sure, 100%.
That's fascinating.
Now, again, not a doctor. Don't play one on TV. There are actually doctors that disagree with this, but hey, keep on digging into the literature. The American Heart Association actually says a lot about sugar, and they also say a lot about the protective nature of testosterone in both men and women. It's our testosterone is actually very low, and it's treated very, very low for both men and women medically. Now, health-wise, raising our testosterone levels, and that can be done in a number of ways, both naturally or through hormone replacement, has heart beneficial effects. And so saying all of that, getting really clear about how your body works. Also, there could be genetic factors. And questioning a lot of those things. There are some people that genetically they are going to treat the lipids and oils, very differently in the system than someone else. And so, getting really clear as to what is going on with your system and getting really clear as to what the lipid profile is, I found that most doctors just don't run enough tests or run deep enough. Often you'll just see HDL and LDL cholesterol. And underneath that, there are dozens of molecular sizes of those. And so there are very, very good lipids. And then there are very, very, very bad lipids. And then there's this host of ones that are kind of in between, right? So knowing how your body is actually, working and what you can do. Like, for instance, I have completely changed the oils that I use because of that deep, deep look at my lipid profile. I really can only have 2 different oils right now that are good for me. Others that you've heard aren't good for me, even though you hear in the popular media, oh, coconut oil or butter. I actually can't have those because of me. Not because of anything else other than the genetics of how I process fats. I can't have coconut oil, and I can't have a butter or ghee or rapeseed oil. These are commonly these are the good oils. They're not good for me. I can have avocado and olive oil, and that's just because of how my body reacts. That's why you need to get curious.
Yeah, and that's a great point, Dave, because I don't know. It seems like we do try and break it down to the one simple thing. What's the calorie count? What's the one diet you should do? What are the foods that are perfect for everybody? And, what works for most is not the same as what works for all. And so that's an important distinction, I think, to remember as we start researching and as we think about this, because it seems like we do want the simple answer, the one number that tells us everything. And,
No.
It doesn't exist that I've ever found. We talked actually a lot about health and wellness. We started off this conversation with so many different facets of life coming into midlife and Muberty, as you put it. And, there's also just kind of the reinvention that comes from midlife. That might be career change. That might be relationships changing.
Yeah, for sure.
And, just kind of quick recap here, on the health piece was, different people are different. So know what your goals are, find doctors who are on your side, sleep better, make sure you're getting plenty of water, cut out sugar, bad sugar.
Let me just add a piece to that, because it's a fallacy. The using, I'm just different as an excuse is a hard no, full stop. Meaning, it's just genetic. I'm different. I'm big boned. I'm just built that way. I've always been overweight. If you are, oh my God, other than like a very small subset, like 6 or 7 genes that we know of that are black and white, meaning that we have lots of genes. And we know what they do. And there are maybe 6 or 7 that are absolutely, if they're on or off, this is what it is, and it's not going to change, right? What we know today is that genes and how they expressed, they can be turned on, they can be off. Even if they're on, they can be muted. If they're off, they can be expressed. Like genes are not a death sentence nor a life sentence. And using them as an excuse, stop with that. So it's like, I'm just different. Stop that. I have fundamentally changed my entire body and my entire life after, coming into it as sick and overweight and on dozens of medications meant for people that were, twice my age. And now I'm in the best shape of my life. And it takes a concerted effort. And if you're starting with, I'm just like that, or 2, I don't have the time, that's okay. Just know that the consequences are the kind of health that you want to have later in life. If you want to live longer and live long better, meaning your health span is longer and your disease span is shorter, then you have some changes to make. You have to be focusing on your health. And I know that your body has a tremendous ability to focus your attention when things go wrong. If you get that cancer diagnosis, if you get that heart attack, if you get that, everything everything will stop and you will focus on this because your body can focus you. So you can either take care of it now or your body's going to take care of it. That is the cautionary tale here.
Well, and that's a nice call out there, that while we need to understand our differences, they're not an excuse for where we want to go. No. And we need to know what they are so we know where we're starting from, how to build the process and get there. But there is still a process to be built. It may look different for you, may look different for me, but we can still get there. And the nice reminder that we are going somewhere. So how do we want to arrive when we get there?
Right. Yeah. Whatever you may believe, whatever your creed is, whatever your belief system is, this experience will end for all of us. It has for everybody who has come before us. And so the question is, how do you want it to go?
Yeah.
that is it, because it truly is only up to you.
Well, and that health span versus disease span, I've heard people talking about that, basically the difference between living a full, healthy life and having a very minor disease span, just reasonably quick after a long life versus spending 20 years sick and this long, slow, grinding wind down.
Yeah.
And so I'm not sure if I'm inspired or depressed by that thought, actually, Dave.
You shouldn't be inspired. I would hope that everybody is inspired in that one. It's not too late until it is, right? I lived this. I first heard it from Jeff Bezos of all people, but he was using it in the sense of business. And I've looked at it through my life, which is living a regret-free life. And that regret-free means that regrets are just delayed decisions. So if you have a regret on something, if you have the time, meaning if you are breathing right now, and then you can make the change, you can take a different decision. And that's where, when it comes to you and your practices and your course and your life, the idea that you can't or you won't or you don't because of something else or someone else or some other circumstances. I don't have the time. I don't have the money. I don't have the right partner. I don't have the right job. I don't have this. I don't have this. That's on you. That is on you. Changing those no's, can'ts, and won'ts into yes, cans, and wills, and seeing where the fear is, where the place is, where are the limits, what's stopping you, and getting on what is most important in your life is key. If it is about health and wellness, like we've talked a lot about here today, I would say that any positive change in your life, maybe it's a change in your career or your relationships or your communities or all of those things are so much harder, maybe even impossible, if you don't have your health straight. And if your health is straight, then changes naturally start to happen in all aspects of your life. Your relationships improve with your kids or your parents or your partner. Your job improves, or they change in fundamental ways. And that can only happen if you're really paying attention to what you have agency over: your mind, your body, your heart, your spirit. It starts there, and then it ripples out. We think that it starts, I'll just change my job and everything will be fine. No. You have to change you, and then everything will be fine.
Dave, that is a perfect stop to end right there. Very nice wrap up. So I guess just kind of final thoughts. Where can people find you if they want to find out more kind of about your thoughts, what your process and all of that?
That's a great question, because I am transitioning how I touch into the world. So, if they reach out through your podcast and feel free to, we will connect that way. I'm not really paying much attention to social media these days for very specific reasons, but if you do reach out on either Facebook or Instagram, I'll eventually get to it, just not right away. Another way would be email. Again, I'm not very good at it, only in the sense of I don't write it like most people do. So reaching out if you have any questions on email is absolutely fine. And it's a funny thing. It's Dave, DAVE, at Limitless. And this is how it's spelled: LIMITL.ES. So no .com, no .org, none of that. It's just .es. So it's Limitless without the last S.
Excellent. Well, Dave, I know we'll get you back on once the book is coming out and talk more about it then, but thank you so much for being on today.
Pleasure, Brock. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening. And I'd love to know what you think. What really resonated for you about this episode or about the podcast in general? And the best way to let me know is to simply leave a review at lovethepodcast.com /midlife mastery. That's it. www.lovethepodcast.com /midlife mastery. And there, by leaving a rating, by leaving some comments on what you liked, what resonated for you, not only does it help me know what's really working for you, and so I can keep doing it and do more of it, but it also lets other people discover the podcast and be able to take this information, this inspiration into their own lives. Because one of the things that I've really come to appreciate is really just the community out there around creating a phenomenal midlife. We're all in it together. We're all going through our own challenges, and there's a lot of information and inspiration that we can learn and pick up from each other. So please keep sharing, keep reviewing, and keep making comments. I'd love to see you over on Instagram. It is at Midlife Mastery Podcast on Instagram, and connect with a lot of people there. That's probably the primary social media site that I use. And so anyway, I think that's it. Let's go have a great day.